Welcome to the Classical Gabfest, a weekly discussion about the ever-changing world of classical music. I'm your host for this week, William White, and with me as always are Tiffany Liu and Kensho Watanabe. This week we've got another of our summer minisodes, wherein we take a closer look at one broad topic in the world of classical music. Our focus today will be on Viola Jokes. But first we like to start with our Prelude segment. So, Tiffany, what do we have today?
Well, fittingly, this week we'll be playing a round of everyone's favorite game, Viola Hero. In the world of classical music, the viola is often overlooked and maligned, the red-headed stepchild of the string section. With this game, we seek to bring awareness to the irreplaceable value of the viola in well-known orchestral works. Here's how we'll play. I'll name a category of symphonic repertoire and then play for you a few bars of just the viola part from a famous work. I have my trusty viola with me, and my co-hosts, along with all of you at home, will try to identify the piece after hearing the excerpt. Okay, I think I'll do this in ascending order of difficulty, I think. So here's our first. Your category is Brahms.
All of Brahms.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm so glad you kept playing there.
I debated whether or not to include those last two bars or not.
So, Kensho, am I right in thinking that this is probably the Brahms Haydn variations?
No, it is absolutely not that.
Okay,
it is the Academic Festival Overture.
All
no,
right.
no, it's Brahms Haydn. No, it's Brahms Haydn. You're right. You're right. No, you're right. I just had a little mix-up there. Sorry, a big mix-up. You're right.
It's from the Passacaglia, like the last variation, right?
It's the last variation.
Thank you.
I feel like I just entered an alternate universe and then slid back into.
It's because I have so little confidence in my understanding of the viola, even though I've probably played that piece 5 times.
So how long did it take for you to get it?
Well, I mean, I had a feeling just because you said all of Brahms and not specified, but when it was triplet ba 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 bum ba 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 bum, that narrowed it down a little bit, and then when it got to the main Passacaglia theme, that was when I got it. So it took me a little while.
I went from wanting it to stop so I can just sing it to myself, and then being very glad that you played the last little bit. So
all right, okay, well, good job. One to you all. The next category is romantic tone poems, which I know is broad, but I'm pretty sure you know this one.
I know
both Kensho and Will, I had the same posture with their first 3 fingers pressed to the forehead between their eyebrows.
I'm pretty sure I got
Will's
it.
got it.
I think it's List les Préludes.
Okay, that's what I thought too.
Good.
Is it?
But I wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good choice.
Placing that with a piece was the difficult part for me. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, and your final category, Sibelius Symphonies.
Ruh-roh. bum bum bum. It's with the two flutes. Da 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 dee da yum bum ba dee da dee da dee da da dun dun da. Which I think is the fifth. Is that right, Kensho?
I don't know.
It's tricky because I've heard in concert in the past like 4 weeks the fifth, the second, and the first. And unless this is the third.
But yeah, it's the fifth.
It's the fifth.
I think.
Tiffany, we're taking the fifth.
It's the third.
It's the third. And and I'm planning to do that next season, so I've been listening to that too. So.
Yeah, but the second movement of both of these are very easy to confuse because they're both repetitive, kind of slow folk tune type things. But you're singing the right thing. Well,
yeah, I know.
This is my favorite symphonic movement of all of Sibelius in his entire oeuvre. It's just my favorite movement. I think it's the most lovely, the most elegant and sad, and all the Sibelian things.
Right.
So. There you are. Okay, not bad. 2 out of 3, and with I would say half a point on 3 because you were singing the right thing. It's the nomenclature.
I'm glad to hear that, and any members of Harmonia Orchestra will be happy to know that I got a half a point on that since we're planning to play it next season. So thanks, Tiffany.
Great piece.
Yeah, it's very true.
That just about does it for this week's Prelude segment. But before we wrap up, we'd like to remind our listeners that we do periodic listener-generated Name That Tune rounds, so we invite you to try and stump us. Check our show notes where you'll find a link to the form, where you can upload a 30-second clip of an unidentified piece of classical music for us to try to identify. And with that, we move on to our discussion topic for the day. So, Kensho, what are we talking about?
Today's Minisode discussion topic is Viola Jokes. As you've often heard us say in our intro to Viola Hero, the viola is in fact much overlooked and maligned in the world of classical music, but perhaps what it's most famous for is being the butt of the joke. How is lightning like a viola's finger? Neither one strikes in the same place twice. Ha 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 ha. How do you keep your violin from getting stolen? Put it in the viola case. What's the difference between a violin and a viola? The viola burns longer. That's just a smattering of the indignities that violas and violists are commonly subjected to. In fact, those jokes come from an MIT website from the early 1990s, which means that it was just shortly after the birth of the internet that this new technology was used to collect and display music's cruelest form of humor. But why should it be so? The viola is blessed with a dulcet mellow sound that contains many colors not readily available on the violin or the cello. And it was the preferred instrument of some of the greatest musicians in history, including Mozart and Beethoven. We hope to get to the bottom of the source of this rancor towards such a beautiful instrument, but first, let's get some jokes out of the way. Who wants to start?
I'll start. I think I've heard them all. There's a few good ones. One that I particularly like is one that pits violists against conductors. Well, actually, two of them that I have are that. So there's a famous one. You are driving down the road and you see in the middle of a street a violist and a conductor. Which do you hit and why? And the answer is, of course, the conductor. Business before pleasure. The second is more of a story joke. And so it starts with the back stand of violas in an orchestra. And
this is my joke.
Oh, okay. Do you want to tell it? Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead. I already told the joke.
No, you can do it better. I bet you can do it better.
So one day the last seat violist is late to rehearsal. He's running in late. And it turns out that the conductor has not shown up for rehearsal. And just as he's running in, the manager grabs this last seat viola and goes, the conductor's not here. We need somebody on the podium. I mean, can you do it? You get up there. You got to do it. So the violist, doesn't really know what he's doing, gets up there, conducts, and amazingly, it goes pretty well. So it turns out that then he's invited to conduct the concert. And then, in fact, the orchestra goes on a big, huge international tour. And the last seat violist, his star is rising, and he conducts the whole tour. And it's a huge success, ovations everywhere. And the orchestra comes back from their tour, and now their regular conductor is back, and so the violist goes back and assumes his seat at the back of the viola section, and he sits down, and he's had all this great success, and his stand partner looks at him and he goes, "Oh, hey, great to see you. Where have you been?" So there we go. I don't know. What are some other good viola jokes?
Okay, so I have another story one too, which also involves a last stand violist. Let's say this violist name is Will, and he's a last stand viola in a community orchestra. Let's say in the state of South Carolina, where I am right now. Mm. And, he's happy playing, but he just feels like he needs a little bit more fulfillment in life. And on the way home from rehearsal, he comes across a lamp. And naturally, he rubs the lamp and out pops a genie. Mm-hmm. And the genie says, "Well, I am this magic genie, and I'll grant you 3 wishes." And so Will says, "Great. Well, I would like to be the best violist in the state." Mm. And the genie's like, "So it shall be done." So Will becomes the principal violist of the
South Carolina Symphony, I think.
South Carolina Symphony, let's say. Mm-hmm. And, Will goes on to play some great concerts as principal, really, feeling pretty good about himself. But after some time, he's like, not quite satisfied yet. So he, taps on the lamp again, and the genie pops out. And Will proclaims that he would like to be the best violist in the world. And so Genie says, "So it shall be done." And Will becomes the principal violist of the Berlin Philharmonic. And of course, at this point, he's gained so much notoriety. He's now performing concertos with orchestras, touring the world, having a great time. And at some point, he's like, okay, there's got to be something better than this. And so he uses his last wish. He knocks on the genie's lamp, and the genie pops out. And Will says, "I've performed such great music already, but I just want to be an even better player. I want you to make me better than any violist has ever been." And Genie says, "So it shall be done." And Will ends up right back where he started, at the last chair violinist of the community orchestra in South Carolina.
Har, 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 har.
Along the same kind of lines, or I guess a very much shorter version of the same joke, what do you call a prodigy violist? Wasted potential.
See, I mean, that gets to, if we're trying to discern the well of where the viola joke comes from, it's from violinists being assholes. That's what it's all about. And it's because viola is... it's something that not everybody is attracted to, unlike the violin, which tends to, it tends to attract the same kind of kids who gravitate towards soccer, I think. It's violin is this much more competitive thing. It's a much bigger community, and it's harder to make your way in the world. So you've got to be a little bit more alpha. You've got to be a little bit more competitive. And viola's it's a smaller pool, and there's fewer opportunities, so people are more chill, I think. And so violins are just endlessly making fun of violas who have more docile personalities. Would you agree or disagree? Since both of you, I as bad a violist as I am at least a gold star violist. I started on the viola, I chose it because I loved it, and I stuck with it. You guys are much better violists than I am, which is very annoying to me. But you're both violinists at heart.
I don't know. I've played in chamber ensembles where the alpha was the violist. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a stereotype to say that the violists are docile or somehow more passive.
I find violists very smart usually, but I don't think that they often have that same competitive drive or edge. But of course, these are broad categorizations. These are broad stereotypes. So I don't know. Tiff, what do you think?
It's funny that you say that I'm a violinist at heart, which is like correct in training and essence and time spent playing. But if you were to like take the blueprint, because there's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing going on here, right? Where like, okay, are you going to call violas kind of a little bit better at more docile, or in other words, better at blending, because that skill is the one that is more valuable in the viola section, whereas a violist, generally speaking, because they end up in more collaborative situations, because the viola is not inherently such a wonderful solo instrument, or at least doesn't have the brilliance that the violin does, chicken and egg, right? Temperamentally, I would say I think I belong more in the viola section, but it's just not as fun to play those parts. It just isn't. Give me a Prokofiev violin part any day.
I agree with you that temperamentally you are more a viola spirit, Tiffany. But I also think that, and I say this all the time, there's no such thing as boring music. There's only boring musicians. And I think that you can embrace those inner parts, even in something like a Strauss waltz, which I sort of mocked by doing that for Viola Hero one of the times that I've done it. I think that part of the reason that so many composers are violists, including myself, is that like you do gain this appreciation for the inner engine that makes a piece drive, and often that is the rhythmic inner voices, and even if that's just pa pa to a bass there is something where you can sit back and listen to the harmonies and figure out how the whole thing is working. And in a way, like the reason I like playing the viola is I feel like I have the best seat in the house to listen to all of the colorful stuff that's going around me in an orchestra.
There is definitely something to the fact that you can appreciate how it all comes together as a member of the viola section in a way that, just looking at like the things that violinists like to play at the highest levels, like Paganini, Vinyasky, that's like the most virtuosic stuff that we have, and people like get their jollies off of doing it, and it is like, musically speaking, it's pretty dire, I have to say. Mm-hmm. So if that's what we have greatest appreciation for in violin world, yeah, okay, sure, I'll give you that violist can generally perceive better what a quality putting together of an orchestra part actually involves, even if it is pentatonic.
Anybody have a final viola joke that they want to throw on here to the pile? Yeah,
so I'm scrolling down Reddit/Viola jokes here, and there's some pretty good ones. So maybe I'll just contribute some to round out our segment. A violist and a cellist were standing on a sinking ship. "Help!" cried the cellist. "I can't swim." "Don't worry," said the violist. "You can just fake it." Why don't violists play hide and seek? Because no one comes looking for them.
Oh.
What's the similarity between a lawsuit and a viola? Everyone is happy when the case is closed.
What do you call a violist with 2 brain cells? Pregnant. This is a good one. Did you hear about the violist who played in tune? Neither did I. What is the main requirement at the International Viola Competition? Hold the viola from memory. These are so mean, but they are funny. Okay, I won't.
All right, listeners,
we love
send us your favorite viola jokes, and we'll read them on.
Yeah. By the way, this topic was a listener request from very early in the podcast, and it just seemed like a summer minisode was maybe the time to tackle it.
All right. Well, that was fun and mean. Let's move on to our classical mixtape. Tiffany.
In our classical mixtape, we each recommend some music that's caught our ear this week to share with our listeners. So, Will, what do you have this week?
All right, well, we're going full viola on this classical mixtape, and I'm starting with, if I did not take this opportunity to share the greatest viola concerto that's ever been written, which is Alfred Schnittke's Viola Concerto, I would be totally remiss in my duties. Now, here's the thing. I often don't care about the interpreters of one of my mixtape suggestions, but in this case, you must listen to the Kim Kashkashian recording of the Schnittke Viola Concerto. Do not accept any imitations, especially do not listen to Yuri Bashmet's recording. Even though he was the dedicatee of this concerto, he ruins it. Alfred Schnittke was very particular about the tempo relationships. Basically, the second movement of this thing is like a hardcore driving piece that starts off with this like crunchy, insane world of manic insanity. And it goes into a series of waltzes, and the waltzes have to have a very particular tempo relationship to the basic tempo. And Yuri Bashmet, he makes them so flabby. He ruins it. He just totally ruins it. So anyway, this is an amazing piece. Schnittke, right from the start, does a brilliant thing by getting rid of the violins. There's no violins in the orchestra. They are replaced by a prepared piano, a celesta, and a harpsichord, of course. And it's just an amazing piece of music. So
All right. Well, we talked about violinists becoming violists, and that immediately brought my attention to a friend of mine, Ayane Kozasa, who went to Meadowmount School of Music with me on violin and switched to viola later on. And I think she won one of the Primrose competitions a while ago. Really great violist who now plays in the Aizuri String Quartet. And this is her performing Paganini, as we talked about. There is some piece that is written for viola by Paganini, Sonata per la Gran Viola, here performed by Anne.
Great. All right. And to round out our viola mixtape, I'm going to contribute the recording that I talked about when we recently played Name That Tune, because this appeared on it. This is the second of Brahms's 2 songs, Opus 91, named Geistliches Wiegenlied. And this is the recording live from Lincoln Center, performed by Jesse Norman, Pinka Zuckerman, and David Golub. You'll find the links to all these and to our full classical mixtape playlist in the show notes.
And And with that, it's time to wrap up this episode of the Classical Gabfest. I'm William White, and on behalf of Tiffany Liu and Kensho Watanabe, I'd like to thank you so much for listening and to encourage you to subscribe and rate us on your podcast app. We'd also love your help spreading the word about the show on social media, where you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can reach us at classicalgabfest@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, happy listening, and we'll be with you next week.